Hey everyone, it's me, John. Welcome to another episode of BrainScratch for today, Friday, August 18th, 2017. Hope you had a nice week. As we have to do occasionally, today we are doing an update episode. We have updates on 3 cases previously featured on the channel. 2 of them originally BrainScratch cases, 1 of them a Searchlight case, but it's now kind of turned into a BrainScratch case. Essentially, we have a body that's been found, and it now looks like this is turning into a murder investigation. On the second case, someone that kind of went missing, but maybe a bunch of us didn't think that he really went missing. Well, he's back just in time for his book sales. We'll get more to that in a bit. And in the third case, the investigation into the murder of 2 young girls that seems to have solved a completely different case. We got a lot to go through today. Let's jump right into it. Starting with the Searchlight case that I mentioned, the missing persons case of Cara Kopetsky. Unfortunately, we got the news this week that her remains have been identified. Let's jump right into an article on that. And of course, I will have links in the description box below to all the original episodes if you want to go through and watch those before you watch this. I totally understand. Starting at kshb.com, second set of human remains found in rural Cass County identified as Cara Kopetsky. Lieutenant Brad Swanson of the Belton Police Department released the following statement. The Belton Police, along with the Cass County Prosecutor and Sheriff's offices, were notified that the FBI had confirmed that the remains found in Cass County on April 4th were those of Cara Kopetsky. In April 2017, Cass County Sheriff's deputies were called to a wooded area just south of Belton. According to police, a mushroom hunter had discovered human remains. The next day, investigators discovered a second skull in the same area. One set of human remains was identified as Jessica Runyon's, who was last seen on September 8th, 2016. Her death is being investigated as a homicide. Witnesses say Runyon's left a party with Kyler Yost, who is charged with burning her car. Yost is also Kopetsky's ex-boyfriend, and we have a shot of him here. So what I'm thinking is, at this point, look, the conditions that went down in terms of him and Jessica Runyon's are pretty clear. I mean, that's not to say that all the physical evidence is there to necessarily nail the conviction, but we have him leaving a party with her. We have him taking her vehicle and burning it at a location. And now we have found her body that just happens to be in the same location as another ex-girlfriend of his that went missing. So I believe charges are coming his way. I believe it's going to be charges for both of these murders. I'm just hopeful that there's enough physical evidence to really tie him to both of them. I really think that he needs to face judgment for both of these crimes, or face justice, I guess is a better way to say it. I'm a little concerned because typically if remains have been out in the wild for that long, there could be a lot of decomposition. So they might not even have a good idea of what happened to Cara in terms of how her life was ended. That might make for some sticky points in terms of the trial as things go forward. They found Jessica's body within a relatively decent time frame, so I'm hoping that there's enough physical evidence they might be able to get from there to get that conviction through. But I'm going to be very curious to see how this all plays out. And of course, I will keep tabs on it and keep you guys updated with significant developments. There has also been some comments from the Kopetsky family. As usual, I'll have links in the description box below to these articles as well. If you want to hear them speak about it, I highly recommend you come to this article at kansascity.com and play this video clip in particular. I'm going to give you a couple of the highlights of the conversation. I'm finally relieved to have confirmation, Rhonda Beckford, Kopetsky's mother, told The Star. It's been a long 10 years, and this is the start of hopefully moving toward a prosecution. Now we can have a funeral and put her to rest the way it always should have been. She also makes a comment in the video, unfortunately wasn't echoed in the text, just about that now he's no longer hanging this over their head, the fact that they don't know where their daughter is. And that really hit me. I understand there's a lot of emotions people feel when they have a missing loved one. But in this case, they were kind of looking in that direction. They kind of expected that it had something to do with him. And to think that there was this point of just this way that he's almost taunting them by not giving them the information so that they could do this, have a funeral, put her to rest, move forward. It does seem like he's victimizing them directly. And just hearing her phrase it like that really brought that home for me. And this isn't over yet, Rhonda Beckford said. I'm still determined to get justice for my daughter. And I truly, truly hope that they are able to do so. I'm a little concerned just because of how long that body was out there, but I hope they absolutely get justice. All right, moving on to the second story we're covering today. That is the BrainScratch follow-up to my episode on Bruno Borges. Mystery or marketing ploy. Looks like even back then I was kind of leading towards a conclusion, and it was hard not to. There was a lot of information that was already kind of coming out. You know, he had left several books behind in this room that he basically renovated while his parents were away. He took all the furniture out of it. I don't know if he painted all the walls or if they were already white, but he had written text all over all the walls. He left this picture of him with an alien up. He moved in a statue of a philosopher into the middle of the room. Certainly created a lot of buzz about the mystery of what happened and where he went to. But now we have some answers to that. So we're starting with an article at Reddit. This is a translation of an interview that he had done on the show Fantastico. They were a huge source of information. I really want to give them props for digging into this case because even on my first video, they were a key piece in me understanding what was going on with this case. But the person that is doing the translation on this is, I believe it's Jorge AMVF. So I just want to give him a quick shout out on the Reddit community. In this exclusive interview on Fantastico, Bruno Borges spoke for the first time after vanishing and returning home. He starts in the interview by stating that the main goal of his project was to stimulate people to acquire knowledge. Now, I don't know about you guys, but to me, that feels like a bit of a different way of saying, I'm trying to sell books. I mean, what are you pointing out there? That you wanted us to go look into that philosopher, the statue that you left behind? That you wanted us to look into the painting of you with an alien, with both of you wearing white robes? How were you stimulating us to acquire knowledge when you had encoded all the information that you wrote on the walls and the books that you left behind? You guys might tell, I feel like I'm rubbed a bit the wrong way with how he went about all this, but let's continue. The psychology student repeated the words. I'm not going to ruin the language by repeating them, but essentially this translates to acquiring knowledge 21 times during the interview. CCTV footage shows him arriving home in Rio Branco dawn on Friday, August 11th, around 5:22 a.m. after 4 months and 14 days missing. Shows him barefoot, ringing the doorbell. He waited for more than an hour till one of his neighbors appeared and then phoned his father, who came to the door and reacted with surprise and very emotionally to his homecoming. His father describes that they strongly hugged each other, and then he went weak at the knees. This was the best Father's Day gift he could receive. Apparently, they celebrate Father's Day on August 13th, at least for this particular year. He says, Bruno says that he was isolated and disconnected from everything so as to not fail to meet the objective, since he sought isolation in order to avoid being disturbed by the collective. So I think he's trying to say he wanted to be alone, and perhaps he wanted to not be found. I think that's pretty clear what I'm getting from how that's worded. He refuses to point out where he was during his isolation, and he claims this is irrelevant. He's making the suggestion that he was out in nature, but he's not letting anyone know where he was in nature. I'm super, super critical of this. If you are living in nature for over 4 months, it'd be very easy for people to substantiate that information if you would just tell them where you were. They could go there. They could find things that you had left behind. I mean, how was he eating? Was he making fires for himself? Perhaps a shelter that he had built for himself. Unfortunately, we cannot confirm any of that. I have a little bit of a suspicion he might have been at someone's house playing Xbox this whole time. I really don't know. I'm very suspicious about this whole thing, that he's saying he was out in nature, but he's not letting anyone know particularly where. His mother was apparently praying for him to reappear when she received the news that he came back. Just another kind of interesting twist in the story. She says they got in touch quickly and he cried and asked forgiveness. She told him that he didn't need to do that. He revealed that he did not change his mind about the isolation, but he did apparently change his mind about not giving notices to people who care, and he considers that a great mistake that he made. I think there's still a question for a lot of us out here of if the family really knew about this or not. And as we go into the details here more, it becomes fairly clear that at least his friends knew. So he did tell certain people. Why he wouldn't have told his parents in particular, maybe because he needed them to be able to be interviewed and to pull off the reality of him disappearing and this mystical room that appeared in place of his old room, something along those lines. If I was his family member, I'd be pretty upset. I'd be feeling like I was used in all this, but maybe that's just me. Again, he mentions one of his goals was to turn people more avid for the mysterious, because who does not enjoy the mysterious? The world is a mystery and we know nothing yet. I don't know, guys. It really sounds to me like he's a young man. He's coming to understand the world. To be honest with you, it sounds to me like he took like a philosophy class or something in college and is kind of running in that direction of some things that he learned, like a first level philosophy class. And even when we get into some of the details of the book that was released, which we'll get to in a minute, it really seems like that. The stuff that I'm hearing, at least I haven't read the book, but the things that I'm hearing about the book and what are in it, is nothing earth-shattering. So it's weird that there seems to be this bravado or this attitude that he has about this great thing that he's doing for the world. He's created a mystery. He's left all this information behind about how you're supposed to live. The dude's in his 20s. I mean, I kind of understand why he believes all this. I don't understand putting your family through you missing for 4 months, especially because I deal with talking to families of missing people, missing persons cases. So I'm really, maybe my edge is a bit rough when it comes to what he's saying here, but I don't agree with a lot of what I'm hearing. About the statue, he explains that it was a way to make people look for Giordano Bruno because he thinks his knowledge is important. So what I said earlier about him trying to get us to look at the materials that were left behind, apparently he did intentionally leave that statue there because he wanted people to look more into Giordano Bruno's material as well as his own. I mean, just keep in mind, he didn't leave Giordano's books and writing all over his walls. He left his own. About the 14 encoded books, a family friend started to translate with the help from an unnamed computer software. I'm just a little curious about how that's phrased. And the fact that, we already know that he had left a key to reverse the encoding in the room. He literally had left a sheet of paper that had the symbols and the accompanying letters. So I don't know that at that point you'd even need any type of sophisticated computer software. What I'm very curious of is, did this friend just have a copy that was already written in the native language and not the encoded version? It's not the biggest aspect to this mystery. It's just something that kind of tickles my brain while I'm looking through all this. The first book, entitled, and I have to translate it here, The Theory of Absorption and of Knowledge. The Theory of Absorption of Knowledge was released on July 21st with 20,000 printed copies, and his comeback coincided with the success of his work ranking as the 20th nonfiction top seller last week. The police chief who investigated this case believes the story is a marketing stunt due to the connection between his absence or maybe his return and the book release. However, Bruno denies that. He says that, once again, he did this to stimulate people to acquire knowledge. I'm just follow that thought through. You want them to acquire knowledge. So there's these mysterious books he left behind. I mean, if he doesn't see the connection between, I keep telling people that I'm trying to entice them to enjoy the mysterious and I want them to acquire knowledge. By the way, here's 14 books that I've left behind. Wink, wink. I don't get how he thinks there is a separation between what he did and it being a marketing stunt, in particular to sell his books. And then when his books go on sale and they hit the charts, all of a sudden he winds up back home. Hey, Dad, sorry, give me a hug. I don't know, guys. His isolation was intended to seek the truth inside himself, as he needed to find himself again, to be reborn. The reporter informed him that during the investigations, police found that he had signed a contract about the publication of the books before leaving. According to the news report, 19% of the proceeds from the books were going to go to two of his friends, 20% to his cousin. I believe that's the same cousin that loaned him the money for him to disappear. 5% for the publisher, and 61% for him and his family, who paid the costs regarding the publication of the books. The police chief informs that the apprehended contracts demonstrate a plan between him and his friends to promote the book, including release dates as well. So the way the police are looking at this with the information that they were able to find, first of all, I don't think that they really thought that he was ever at any risk. They started finding cracks in some of his friends. We're going to get into those just in a little bit here. Police were fairly confident they knew what was going on here, that this was a marketing stunt the whole time. They literally have a contract about the release of these books. Is it someone, who enticed him to do this? I don't know. I have a feeling that someone at the company that he's working with, the publisher, they probably have a marketing department. Maybe they came up with this or aspects of this that he took on, or maybe he just had this idea that he ran by them. I would be very surprised if there wasn't some type of communication between him and that company, in particular about him disappearing and leaving his room in that state. I don't think we'll ever find that out for sure, but I'd be very surprised if it didn't exist. The police chief wants to hear his statement next week, but in his opinion, this case does not constitute crime because it was a voluntary absence and there is no evidence about the intention of his family. The only thing I disagree with there is, what about the resources it took for this case to be investigated, and how could those resources have benefited other active cases that the police were investigating? You treat this like a missing persons case. You take a couple of investigators and put them on the trail of this kid who's trying to apparently sell a book or spread knowledge, however you want to word it. Those two investigators could have been working on something else, could have potentially been solving real crimes. So I wish that the police would consider some type of charges in terms of not criminal charges necessarily, but, if there was some way to take him to court for a piece of those proceeds or for at least just their fees, whatever hours they worked on this case, something along those lines. But it doesn't seem like that is in the works here. Lastly, he expresses he wants to build a career, keep writing about things he believes are important, and never stop learning and helping people somehow and learn more with himself, or I suppose it's about himself. So that is the main update we get from Fantastico. Let's move forward to an article at g1.globo.com. This has been translated. A link will be in the description box below, but just be aware if you bring it up and it's in a different language, you might want to use Google Chrome and hit the translate button. Bruno Borges is heard by a deputy and says again that he planned to disappear. Say police. Bruno was heard by the delegate investigating the case. I'm just going to refer to that as the investigator going forward. I think there's a little bit of a translation issue. Alcino Jr., on the afternoon of Tuesday, he reaffirmed to the police that he planned the disappearance. disappeared of his own free will, and that he was not coerced. Now, there's an interesting aspect, because if the book company was responsible for helping him with that idea in some way, he pretty much just wiped them free and clear of it with that statement directly to the police. So maybe it was all his own idea. I don't know. The investigator of the case did not want to give more details of the testimony, but said that he will keep the indictment of Bruno's two friends, Marcio Gaiote and Marcelo Ferreira, for false testimony. So let's learn a little bit more about what these guys did. In May of this year, Marcello Ferrara, 22, a friend of the student, was arrested by police for the crime of false testimony, probably lying to the police. In his house, the civil police found two contracts, one of them authenticated on the day of the disappearance, that established percentage of profits with the sale of the books. So he probably told them, no, I don't know where this guy is. No, there's no deal about these books. And they actually found the contracts, and they're charging him for that. Police officers also found furniture from Bruno's room at the home of another friend, Marcio Gaiote, who would have also participated. For the civil police who investigated the case, the contracts, they also found emails and text messages exchanged between the friends clarified the situation. The disappearance of Bruno was part of a plan to ensure the disclosure of the work left by him, or basically it was a plan so that it would make him famous enough to be able to sell some books. And they have a picture of him pointing at one of the books he left behind here. So what about these books? We are finally starting to get some reviews written about them. I did find one review in English, and it gets to the point pretty quickly here. So one of the first reviews in mainstream Brazilian media has come out on the Bruno Borges penned book, Theory of Absorption of Knowledge. And, well, and here's a little GIF that they put in. I'm not sure if they'd enjoyed it. This is at butterflylanguage.com, by the way, just to give proper credit there. So I'm not going to go into all the details, but let me just say once again, the main points that they're talking about being in this book are pretty much low-level philosophical angles. As a matter of fact, several of the things that they're discussing in this book remind me of Benjamin Franklin had kind of 13 rules that he lived by, and a few of those pop up in Bruno's book as well. I don't know if he got them from Ben Franklin. I can't say for sure, but they're kind of just ways of living, like, being a vegetarian, not doing drugs, not being too obsessed with sex. As a matter of fact, he's pointing out several what he considers asexual sages. In that list, you've got Da Vinci, you've got Jesus, Plato, Nikola Tesla, Michael Jackson. Very interesting. And it's, it's apparently kind of a guidebook to how to live to try to get to this point of experiencing something different or having a more productive life. And in particular, it's talking about, a very rigid way of living, vegetarianism, no drug use. There's a slight mention of Hitler, which people are kind of looking at in a bit of a strange way. The author of the review also feels that Borges is somewhat of an awkward writer, almost as if he's translating from another language. So I found the review as well, also at g1globo.com, translated it. Once again, just remember, if you open this link, hit that translate button. He likes to use terms associated with someone who writes difficult words, but does not care if the sentence comes out of nowhere and gets nowhere. Humor, only the involuntary type. And we will close the discussion on this in this respect by using the passage in which he defines the entry, quote, science. And the passage begins with, according to Wikipedia. I use Wikipedia all the time, but I just think it's very funny that they're calling it out like this. And I certainly don't lean on it for anything more than giving the popular story. I've been very clear about that several times in my videos, but there's a whole review here where it goes point by point. They actually kind of list 10 particular points that they're pointing out about this book. So you can read through it for yourselves. But as I said before, I didn't see anything in this that was like, wow, that's pretty interesting, or wow, that's a little bit of a different concept I've heard before. If you've done a first level philosophy class, nothing here will surprise you. And there's also this weird aspect I kind of felt when I was reading through the review, not reading the book, where some of it feels like that kind of self-help stuff, like almost The Secret, a little bit of viral marketing going on here as well. I don't know. It's really not surprising. It's pretty, from what I'm seeing, pretty typical content about how to improve your life, apparently by not eating animals or smoking marijuana or doing a bunch of other stuff like that. So that's it for Bruno. Quite honestly, I don't expect to have many more updates on that case. The big mystery that we were trying to cover is, where is he? What was going on? Was this something supernatural? Was he taken by aliens? What the heck was? And it just played out to be exactly what we kind of thought it was. It was a marketing stunt. He's selling books off of it. I have absolutely no interest in learning more about the books other than the review that I just read. And quite honestly, I have very little interest in even talking about this guy anymore. But I did want to bring you guys up to date on the story and how it concluded. If you want to buy his books, I'm definitely not going to hold that against you guys. But for me, I don't want to support people that would hurt their family in an effort to gain money. I just am not a big fan of that. All right, and let's move on to the third story we're talking about today. Heartbreaker of a case. I keep waiting for a crack in this case, but unfortunately, we don't quite have that yet. But there's this interesting twist that the spirits of these girls seem to be helping this world in some really unique ways. First of all, there was a fundraiser to try to raise money to make the area that they were walking in safer. There was a condition where the city was going to donate $50,000, but only if the local residents could raise $50,000 of their own. So that would make for a combined 100, give them plenty of money to help retrofit that area and make it safer. The residents really rallied together. They creamed the 50,000 number. The last time I checked, it was coming up on 100,000, and that's without the 50 from the city. So it looks like people's heart is really in the right place here. And Abigail Williams and Liberty German might have helped solve another murder in their community in a bit of an indirect way, but surprising. Let's take a look into what I guess we can call the murder of David Sellers at this point, starting at wishtv.com. The Cass County prosecutor said a tip in the Delphi double homicide investigation has resulted in a confession in a 10-year-old murder case. A murder charge has been filed against 39-year-old Kevin Sellers on Thursday. Sellers is accused of shooting his uncle, 50-year-old David Sellers, at the home they shared on November 8th, 2007. Jumping over to fox59.com, we're going to get some more detail. According to court documents, David was found with a gunshot wound to his forehead while in bed at his home on November 8th, 2007. Sellers called 911 to report David's death after he entered his uncle's home and found him dead in his bedroom. Investigators met monthly to discuss the unsolved case for several years. They noticed inconsistencies in Sellers' statements and later discovered he was the sole beneficiary of David's estate. On August 2nd, 2017, Sellers was asked to come to the Cass County Sheriff's Office because detectives were investigating a tip about the murders of 14-year-old Liberty German and 13-year-old Abigail Williams. Investigators told Sellers they received a tip that he killed his uncle in 2007 and got away with it. He initially denied the allegations, but after investigators presented the evidence, he said, "I surrender." According to court documents, Sellers then detailed at length how he shot David, confirming details that the previous investigation had revealed. Apparently, The gun that David was shot with was found in the bed right next to him. So there was a big question of, did he actually kill himself or was he murdered? And I believe that's part of how this got so easily covered up. Not to mention the fact that if they were looking for physical evidence, DNA, anything like that, with this being his own nephew, any of that they found in the house could probably be easily explained if his nephew was a regular visitor to the home. Jumping over to people.com, let's get just a little more detail. Last week, Kevin revealed that he had purchased the gun that he used to allegedly shoot his uncle shortly before his death. He said that he disposed of his uncle's bloody clothes at a local park while on his way to his friend's house, where he spent the day in order to have an alibi, the probable cause claims. So you can see this guy thought it out pretty strongly and got away with murdering his uncle for 10 years. But the investigation and a community that still cares very much about these two young women who were taken from this world far, far too early, helped crack this case. I did originally want to cover this as a case cracked, but unfortunately there's just not enough detail in terms of the backstory for me to make a whole episode out of it. But I thought it was really important that I share that with you guys, and at least we have something positive happening in the Delphi murder investigations. Hopefully, I really hope that we will see some movement in the case of these two particular young women very, very soon. Just another look at the sketch. Just a reminder for all you out there, this is the guy that they're looking for. Currently, Williams and German's case remains unsolved. More than $230,000 has been raised for reward for any information leading to the arrest of Liberty and Abigail's killer. And they have contact information, which I will copy in the description box below, so that if you have some information, hopefully you'll use it and help bring this killer of these two young women to justice. That's it for your updates on BrainScratch, everyone. Pretty interesting week. There was a lot going on. Unfortunately, I didn't feel like any one of those stories was quite big enough to blow into its own episode, but they were really important pieces that I wanted to get out to you guys. So get out to you guys and gals, by the way. So I just wanted to do it in this format where we could do a quick update segment and get through all of those. Next week, we will get back to business as usual with a new fresh case on BrainScratch. On Searchlight, I might need to do an update episode because there's the other couple of cases that have updates kind of in the same vein, kind of small updates, but they're important. So keep an eye out for that next week. Also, I have done another taping of a podcast for Where Did the Road Go? So any of you fans of Soraya out there, I know many of you are subscribed to him and me, know that there will be an episode coming up very soon where we talk about several recent cases. I talk about some information on that podcast that I don't necessarily talk about on this channel. So I think it's really worth you guys checking out. I hope you'll do it. He's a real good guy, and I really appreciate whenever I get to be on that show. So I'm not sure when it's going to be released quite yet. Just keep a look on his channel, but I'll also be sure to make a mention of it here as soon as that firms up. Take care, everyone. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Thank you so much for being part of this awesome community here with me on the Lord and Arch channel. I will see you here on Monday.